Social media addiction is a growing concern for many parents. In fact, according to Pew Research, 97% of U.S. teenagers go online every single day, and 46% say they're almost constantly online. 54% of teens say it would be really hard to give up social media.
So when's the right time for teens to start using social media? Well, joining us now is United States Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, who recently made headlines warning that 13 is far too young to join social media. Welcome back to GMA3.
Well, thanks so much. Good to be with you.
Of course. Now, what problems are we seeing when it comes to young people and kids on apps like TikTok and Instagram, and what is the data telling you?
Well, let me tell you why I'm concerned, and it's a combination of data and stories that have really led to my concern. You know, as Surgeon General, I've traveled the country and talked to parents and kids all across America. I've also talked to researchers who have studied this area, and more the data is telling us that social media use for many children is associated with increased risk of depression, anxiety, and other mental health symptoms. It also, in many kids, is contributing to their sense of loneliness and impacting their own self-esteem. But when I talk to children and parents, the number one question parents ask me is social media hurting my children? And kids have a remarkable amount of insight. They tell me three things consistently about social media. One, that it makes them feel worse about themselves. Two, that it makes them feel worse about their friendships. But three, that they can't get off of it. And that's a really important point for us to underscore here, which is while parents and kids are fighting this battle, trying to figure out how to manage social media, these platforms have been designed by some of the best product designers in the world, and they're designed to bring and reel our kids in, to keep them on these devices and maximum time spent. But that's not always good for our children, and so this is not a fair fight that's being waged. The best product designers and companies versus parents and kids. We've got to stand up for parents, we've got to stand up for kids, and that's one of the many reasons I issued a Surgeon General's advisory on youth mental health last year, because we have a youth mental health crisis in America, and social media is an important part of that.
What do we know in terms of brain development about, is there a sweet spot? Is this an all or nothing phenomenon? Let's talk about early adolescence, for example.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, Jen, and what we know is that phase of early adolescence, this is a time when kids' brains are developing, but they're also developing in terms of their social relationships. It's a critical time when children are also developing their own self-esteem and sense of identity. And in that time, what we need to do is surround them with healthy environments that help them build healthy relationships with themselves and others. But unfortunately, for many children, that is not their experience with social media. And one other critical data point it's important to know is the University of Michigan had done a study back in 2021 showing that parents of kids 10 through 12, 49% of them say that their kids are on social media, and 1/3 of parents of kids 7 through 9 say that their kids are using social media. So while I'm concerned about the age 13, I'm also concerned about all the kids under the age of 13 who are currently using social media and really shouldn't be. So if there are rules in place, they're not being enforced. But I believe, you know, as a society, we've got to raise the age at which kids can use these platforms and actually enforce it. We also have to demand transparency from companies when it comes to the data that they have, because independent researchers do not have access to this data to understand the full impact on the mental health of our kids. And finally, we need to have safety standards, Jen. You know, many of the products that I have in my own home, that many of us have in our home, have to meet a certain safety standard before we could purchase them. Millions of our children are using these platforms, yet the safety standards are just not adequate, in my point of view. So these are areas where we can make a difference in society, and we've got to do it because parents and kids are really struggling right now.
You mentioned some of these kids say that it actually makes them feel worse about themselves. It can cause depression, but they're addicted to it. So what conversations can parents have with their teens to help protect them from these effects?
So there are steps that parents can take. Number one, as much as possible, delay that age, you know, at which kids start to use social media, certainly past the age of 13. And it's hard to do on your own, but if you band together with other parents, it's a lot easier to do when your child's not the only one who's not allowed to use social media at a certain age. Parents can also carve out time in their child's life that is free from the use of social media and tech more broadly. That could be dinner time. It could be time when they're doing their homework, when they're interacting with friends. It can also be time around bedtime, because too many kids are going to sleep with their phones or staying up late at night, losing sleep because they can't get off of social media. And finally, just remember, leading by example is always powerful. As one of my friends told me before I became a dad, your kids will sometimes listen to what you say, they'll more often listen to what you do. And so when we practice safe and balanced habits when it comes to social media, that sends a good message to our kids to do the same.
And Vivek, we're almost out of time, but what do you think the role of government is? What would legislation look like for this issue?
I think government has a role when it comes to establishing safety standards, when it comes to requiring the kind of data transparency that has been lacking for many years. And so, there's already legislation over the last couple of years that has been put forward on a bipartisan basis, but we've got to move faster as government, as tech companies have to move faster, all of us, because each day that goes by without us addressing this challenge, more of our children are suffering.
And I liked what you said, leading by example as parents. Thank you so much. That is great advice. United States Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.